Comments on a Christian moral code of life. On company keeping with members of the opposite sex. Pope Pius XII, in his allocution to the parish priests of Rome on February 22, 1944, says, "If the pastor of souls, as his sacred obligation before God and the Church oblige him, wants to conquer the two cancers of the family life, the abuse of matrimony and the violation of marital fidelity, he must form, guide, and instruct with the light of faith a whole generation, which from early life has learned to think spiritually, to live chastely, and to dominate itself." The pastoral instruction of Pope Pius XII regarding the means of safeguarding the sanctity of married life is quite clear. The education for it must come before the marriage ceremony takes place. The pastor of souls is bound to a sacred obligation to see to it that such an education takes place if he is to fulfill his obligation before God and his church. Note well, the path which His Holiness embarks the pastor upon, he is not necessarily to work directly with those who are married, though this is to be desired and encouraged. He is to educate and form the youth prior to any attempts on their part of pursuing marriage. In doing this, he will raise to God a whole generation which has learned a proper respect for chastity and the sanctity of married life. In this way, virtue will be safeguarded, a true understanding of marriage will be formed, and society as a whole will profit from the well-grounded family spirit, its true basic unit. In the youth, then, the question arises, if marriage is to be regarded as something permanent, and we wish to avoid any breakdown that may occur between the bond of husband and wife, would it not be better to begin to get to know someone early in life, and thus determine if this is the person I wish to spend the rest of my life with? A question such as this betrays not just a naivete in youth, but rather it shows forth a lack of understanding of the nature of man, his human weaknesses, and a lack of trust in God, who will provide for the future preservation of the married life, if only his guidance and grace is sought after from the very beginning. What is wrong with dating and dangerous company keeping with members of the opposite sex? Plenty. One needs only to reread the warnings cited by the Philippine hierarchy given above to understand the concern there is for eliminating the false concept that young men and women must begin to associate themselves with each other from their early years. Dating, in this concept, may bring about a better knowledge between two people, but the familiarity which it breeds will cloud the true knowledge of the weakness of human nature and the ease with which sins against chastity can, and more than likely will be committed. Dating, by its very nature, tends to set in motion the chain of emotions described by Father Richard Madden in writing about going steady. Quote, "Nature doesn't change. It always works the same way. The longer a guy and girl are together, the more they get used to each other. This initiates certain familiarities, which create a situation in which things get cozier and cozier. With all this comes a certain blindness, which makes them both think they need each other for the rest of their lives. Then their spiritual life goes to pot because they start rationalizing. This can't be evil. We are in love. It is all downhill, the whole thing. Kids who are going steady for a long time are pretty much barring their tatered souls to the world. It is all too human." As early as 1954, the late Most Reverend John Knoll, Archbishop of Fort Wayne, found it necessary to condemn grade school parties in no uncertain terms. He wrote, "Having had reports from different parts of the diocese on parties prepared for boys and girls of the 7th and 8th grades of our parochial schools, I am writing to declare that they are entirely out of keeping with the spirit of the Church, and that your Archbishop can no longer tolerate them. Our schools exist primarily to keep the children innocent and to guide them rightly. This cannot be done if we imitate in all things those practices among the children of the public schools which are wholly out of keeping with the canonical teaching of the Catholic Church. Any person, be he youth or adult, who says that there is little or nothing wrong with innocent kisses and embraces among young men and women is, to use an expression, buffaloed. The kiss or the embrace itself may be innocent, but what of the natural reaction within the youth who makes such unnecessary physical contact? It is this all too human reaction to the stimulus of the kiss or the embrace in which the sinfulness of the action consists. Usually the attitude of a girl toward a kiss is somewhat different from the attitude of a boy. A girl loves affection and is a little afraid of passion. She enjoys being admired, so to her the kiss seems to indicate that she is attractive to some boy, and she finds in a kiss the manifestations of his affection for her. With a boy, the attitude is different. He may first kiss a girl calmly and peacefully when he says good night, and the whole experience may seem quite harmless. But if he continues to kiss her, the warmth and intensity grow. In no time at all, he is likely to find himself hot and excited, the sexual urge rising within him, and strange but unmistakable yearnings manifesting themselves in his body and soul. Under the influence of his emotions, the girl is aware of the same emotions rising in herself. Nature, you see, designed the kiss to do exactly this. Many of the warm-blooded people are very realistic about the whole matter. The Latins do not permit a young man and a young woman to kiss until they are married. The kiss, if it is permitted at all, is given on the girl's fingertips or on her cheek. The Latins seem to work on the assumption that the kiss can easily stir a man to passion, arouse his sexual instincts, and make for fierce temptation. They know that the kiss is the natural way by which a man and a woman indicate their desire for the union of their love. The embrace may be somewhat the same as the kiss. Again, in itself, the embrace is natural. Thus a mother hugs her baby. The father of the prodigal embraced his son and held him close in his arms. Mothers and daughters sometimes embrace in the intensity of joy. Soldiers after victory or athletes after winning score will hug one another fiercely and quite harmlessly. The embrace is in itself a symbol of emotion, as the kiss is an external sign of inward feeling. But the embrace can definitely be something worse. It can be the sign of opportunity for union, the closest possible union between a man and a woman. Nature so designed it. It brings the man and woman so close that the passing of the seed of life is easy and natural. As a consequence, and as a part of the general flowing plan, nature designed the embrace of affection and love to excite both the man and the woman. It was meant to be stimulating. The sexual urge responds to it with vigor and promptness. Let's be realistic. Here are two young people moving toward the time of marriage. Within them, the seed of life has fully matured. Out of deep affection, they allow themselves long and fervent embraces, and they sin. For what happens? If there does not result a strong reaction and an emotional excitement with possibly the desire to go further than the embrace, I think that you and I would agree that their emotions are more than a little below normal. This was from Father Daniel Lord's Love, Sex, and the Teenagers in 1947. Company keeping and steady dating then is only to be justified at an age when marriage in a near future may be seriously contemplated by both parties concerned, with a chaperone, preferably with some members of the family. An attitude like this may seem prudish or not at all in conformity with the common practices in the world today. This is true, when judged by the world's standards. But should we care about the judgment of the world in matters pertaining to the salvation of souls? In the world, marriage is considered to be less than the permanent bond between man and woman as it was established by God. Pope Pius XII remarked that those very countries who boast of an advanced civilization present a spectacle of the most profound moral devastation. He continued later in his address, "It is necessary that married life once again be clothed and surrounded by that respect with which healthy and uncorrupted nature and revelation adorned it, with respect for the forces which God has wonderfully infused into nature to create new lives, to build the family, to preserve the human race. Bringing young people up to have chaste thoughts and affections, to practice premarital continence, is not the ultimate goal to which Christian education looks and aims, but rather demonstrates its power to strengthen man's spirit against dangers which threaten virtue. The young person who faces and endures victoriously the battle for purity will also observe the other commandments of God and will be prepared to found a family according to God's designs. On the other hand, How could one ever hope for chastity and marital fidelity from a young person who can never dominate himself and rule his passions, nor despise bad invitations and evil examples, and who before marriage permitted himself every moral disorder? This, then, is the imperative work of pastors and parents, to see to it that the youth under their charge realize the many dangers confronting them on all sides. If society is to remain whole and of benefit to all mankind, it must be grounded on a solid structure of families, well knit and rooted in the fear and love of God. Such families will only come into existence if only the youth who prepare for marriage understand the seriousness of their plans and the necessity to prepare in a chaste manner for such a holy state. In the words of the pastoral letter from the Second Plenary Council of Baltimore, quote, "Purity of life and affection, that has better and more lasting grounds than the impulse of passion, are the only proper dispositions for entering upon a state of life which death alone can change, and which involves so many and important consequences for time and eternity." Comments on a Christian moral code of life. On company keeping with members of the opposite sex.